role is, part of the economies of the company as well. And I think the brilliance of sustainability is the opportunity that every organization, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what size you're in, is to be involved in not just reducing.
Get started. Hello, Leslie. I'm very happy to have you. I am the host and the co-host tonight, as Isabella is traveling. So there is a unique opportunity to have only me as a host. And what we do at the Actionable ESG Talk series, we bring together great minds to discuss the current state and the future state of ESG sustainability and digital transformation, which includes AI and IoT. And I'm really delighted to have you tonight. A little bit about your bio. Impressive. You are a dynamic force in driving corporate profitability. You are one of the few people that connect profitability and sustainability in the same sentence, in the same time. And also something that struck me from your resume is your passion for systems thinking. I think we share this passion. The world is a complex place, and system thinking allows us to take it apart and put it back together, and hopefully getting it a little bit better in the process. Without further ado, we usually start with a broad question, and we'd like to listen to you how the current sustainability trends influence marketing strategies today, and how this goes across various industries. You have, again, an impressive list of industries on your resume.
Sure. It's a good topic. It's a common topic, I think, because in the short term, sustainability overall, and definitely in marketing, is in a flux, right? We're in a transition period. And I believe that the transition will lead us to a future where there are clear global guidelines, a general status quo that just embeds sustainability as a part of the way marketing works. And we've seen lots of examples of this over the past. You can go all the way back to how alcohol and tobacco was covered in advertising, over history, and where those regulations have come into product developments and things like fire retardant in youth sleepwear. And in more recent, most of us have lived through the data privacy guidelines that, started as what feels right, what does our company believe in, to guiding principles that global companies will follow. So sustainability is far from a new topic, and there's been products that have specialized in sustainable areas for decades, and marketers that have marketed those products. But certainly sustainability has increased to a major prominent topic, and for good reasons, that we're currently talking about it today. There's a lot of pressures on organizations, their marketing departments included, to consider sustainability. And that ranges from what the government regulations are coming out to what consumers are demanding. And it'll be interesting to watch. I guarantee we'll see case studies written in the future detailing these, but there's companies that are building sustainable products right now, and solutions and services that are purpose built for the sustainable future. There are others that are leading the charge of updating their organizations with a sustainable strategy ahead of regulation, and then there's many others that are waiting for the regulation to require that they make certain changes that they'll need to do. If we consider sustainability back in the way that we've seen other things come into marketing and required change. I think we can guess which of those companies, which types of companies will have the most success in this area. And I always refer to, when people challenge me on this, I'm like, let's just ask Kodak how they're doing to get a better idea of keeping it, is it a good idea to keep your head in the sand or be on the forefront of evolution?
And sharing with my audience, which maybe doesn't know, but Kodak had a patent for digital cameras. They tried to delay it and delay it because they were still getting good revenue from films until they didn't, and they never recovered. So there are stories, and this is a great point actually to bring Kodak into the focus, no pun intended, of the industry, because sustainability it's a cornerstone. And what I noticed in the last few months, companies are starting to be very careful with their sustainability statements. Some of them stop them completely, which they can't because regulation is coming, but and others are much more consistent and more guarded when they release data about sustainability. So definitely, I see it as a positive trend. It is a little bit of slowdown in reporting, but much more thoughts going in what they report, how they
Yeah,
report.
well, like we said, it's in flux, right? There was the companies that were going ahead and got caught out for greenwashing. Then there was the next flow that went, oh, let's not say anything, as you were saying, and now there's an issue with green hushing. And well, I'm an internal optimist. I do feel like we'll find, with organizations and sustainability leaders and governments working together, that there will be a solution. And it's an opportunity right now to be ahead, and be ahead in a way that's, actually a very positive way,
Yes.
and resonates with employees and consumers alike.
Usually, as a joke, I'm challenging CEOs to tell us that, I don't want my company to be sustainable, right? My next 6 months, 1 year plan is to get rid of sustainability. We don't need a sustainable company. And of course, we all hear this statement. I think you can bring forward a number of really lessons. I mentioned at the beginning, you work in various industries. Any, lesson coming to your mind from our audience that you can share?
I think it's back to what you said as far as challenging CEOs of any organization. Tell me why you don't want to be sustainable. Sustainable is, part of the economies of the company as well. And I think the brilliance of sustainability is the opportunity that every organization, no matter what sector you're in, no matter what size you're in, is to be involved in not just reducing negative impacts on people on the planet, but also increasing the positive impacts for today and future generations. There's an applicable saying, don't do less bad, do good, or something similar to that. And that refers to lowering your negative impacts is not enough. You must be taking things forward. And I think when we talk about the future of companies and their ability to be marketable in the future, that is a component that you have to be, ahead of this, forward thinking in this. But of course, it can't all be done at once. And so prioritizing the most impactful issues, is a meaningful first step for an organization in any types of industries. And then what I like to do in my type of work is I also find some low-hanging fruit, not stuff that doesn't make any difference, but things that you can just actually get done quickly to build some momentum on short-term success as you work on some of the more complex, longer-term issues. Now, when you mentioned different industries, they're not industries I've worked in directly, but certainly there are some industries that are more impactful to climate change, such as oil, gas, coal, agriculture, or more impactful on human impact, such as like retail and healthcare. But when it comes to sustainability, it's not just a direct path. There's so many different inter they're all interrelated. Sorry. And just as every organization, aligns with supply chain and all the complexities, as we were talking about systems thinking, every person does. And there's another saying, and it's an organization that I work with, and I love it. And I repeat it often to people, and it's that every job is a climate job. And so what it really means is it doesn't matter where you sit in the organization. I mean, people could challenge, like, what is marketing? It's only like the messaging and greenwashing something. And that's not true. Marketing can be involved in the product development, the packaging, numerous areas to make an impact in the organization. So that's what I like to also speak to folks, not just challenge them on why is sustainability not important, with an obvious answer, but what can you do in your role?
And actually, that brings the issue of governance, which is the G in ESG, brings the issue of ethics, and actually, you are a colleague podcaster. You have a podcast called the Eco Marketing Podcast. Congratulations, by the way. And I picked the last topic I think you were discussing with your guest was the topic of ethics in governance and ethics in sustainability. Would you like to share something on this podcast?
Sure. And let me just step back for a minute. I'll give a little personal story of why the Eco Marketing Project started, because it does talk about this: every job is a climate job. So in my personal life, and for many years, I've done more and more to be environmentally conscious. Everything from, I won't brag, but like, or disclaim it, but lots of different things. And at some point, I stopped and went, I feel like I'm living one life in sustainability and then going to work and not addressing it at all. Started to talk to colleagues and my staff, and a lot of people had the interest to be more sustainable, but they were afraid to start. They had tried something and failed, and there was just the momentum was not happening. So as I went to look at solutions online and so forth, I kind of came up with this was quite a few years ago, some really high level 3 ways to green your marketing type articles. And then there was no real content until we got to textbooks. So I was feeling very good that the students coming up and were going to be well versed in it, but the organizations and the teams and the leaders in those marketing teams were not. So I begrudgingly bought the textbook and said, okay, well, I'll learn it this way. And what I ended up with was a notebook full of questions, not answers, not the plan. That was not my straightforward path. So I thought, well, what do I do at this point? And I said, not only am I going to go out and find these questions, and it's evolved over the years with new questions as AI has become a bigger topic and things like that, to sharing that knowledge as I gain it. And that's what the Eco Marketing Project overall has been. The most popular piece certainly has been the podcast, as I typically I find a topic like, I just learned that, the carbon impact of digital campaigns. What can we do about that? And finding a specialist to talk to me about that, and then sharing that information. So that's a little bit about how I looked at that situation of how is my job a climate job, to taking it forward and creating the Eco Marketing Project. Then specifically, as you mentioned, some ethics around AI that we've covered on the podcast just recently. I was really what's the word? I was really positive about the opportunities. Now, there's some challenges that we haven't covered on the podcast yet, like potential job losses, potentially, especially people like content writers, and also the immense electricity that AI requires, which is less of a marketing topic. But I would certainly open it up to any of your audience members that have expertise in these areas, and I'd love to connect and continue our discussions on that. But the areas that we did cover are more optimistic. And my favorite in these is more on the human rights element, and that is the improved connection with underrepresented audiences by removing bias in our communication. Right. So you and I come from similar backgrounds and also dissimilar backgrounds. But today we're speaking, in a way that aligns to our backgrounds. We could be talking about something else, whether it's food or raising children or something like that, that it might be completely different. And certainly the information that's been fed into AI in a lot of cases is biased. But now there are new tools, and one is called LLM, for instance, and this trains the AI on more diverse data. So once the AI has gotten these, maybe it's only in print, for instance, or it's really old information. Once that's been added, then it can create a much more familiar tone for underserved populations. And this can be really important in things like pharmaceutical trials. And the example on the podcast that is described is engaging a higher number of lower income in the Black population of the US, that some of these drugs are actually targeted to help the health of this population. And in the normal way of doing the marketing out and getting the word out about these potential opportunities, the connections have been quite low. So they're looking at utilizing AI to update the communications, to speak more locally and create those trustful connections. And so that's a really good example of how marketers can use AI in looking at their systems to lower bias that might be in, just because we're all human and we all come from our own personal biases, good and bad, when we speak. But I think it's a really nice way to ensure fair and ethical marketing practices by using tools like that. We also covered some areas in AI for more sustainable marketing in like eco-friendly campaigns. So I mentioned there's a separate podcast on decarbonizing media campaigns, but there's also opportunities to reduce waste and minimizing impact through targeting the messages. And again, lowering the overall impact of the marketing that we do, whether it's in person or online. And AI, as we know, it's a wonderful tool. It can create strategies that can boil down a lot more data than we can without it, and can help us find solutions for eco-friendly services, practices, improvements in a way that's just outside of our normal scope. And then in a smaller way, but certainly important way, AI can be used to optimize the supply chain. It's a huge topic in sustainability now, so I wouldn't leave marketing out in that piece, but the powered predictive analytics can really streamline supply chains. It can reduce waste, minimize carbon emissions. There's another plugging the eco marketing project, but I really learned so much from specialists. There's a specialist on there talking about that in travel planning and utilizing AI as a tool to align with so many more metrics than we would normally look at, as like, what's the cost of the flight, but how many flights are taken, what's the human impact of the locale that the meeting might be held in, and some really interesting things to use for something as simple as internal travel planning. So yeah, sourcing using the technologies that are available, such as AI, can also just add one more step to a company being more sustainable through what people are doing every day. And that is the tagline of the Eco Marketing Project. What what decisions are you making today, and how can each one of those be done a little greener?
And no, you brought a very interesting point about, and this is a real story. One company, one global company in accounting, I will not name it, but one global company is now asking, you have two budgets for travel. You have a carbon budget and you have a dollar budget. And you have to meet them both. You cannot just travel to a conference and have a high carbon. You take a transatlantic or trans-Pacific flight. You land in a hotel that is not. You have to calculate your budget, and if you don't meet both budget conditions, no travel. So there are really simple methods to bring the sustainability to every person, as you said, and sustainability is it's for every job. I picked up it's every person's job is to worry about sustainability. And this is an example how they bring it forward, right? Because if I have to travel and get the travel approval, I cannot get it if my travel budget of my carbon footprint budget it's exceeded.
Yeah, and it's
So
it's a really nice opportunity for people to feel good about the work that they do, but also make an impact of where they are in the organization. Most people are interested in getting the next job and so forth. And what a wonderful piece to take to the company to say, I do the travel planning, and in addition to keeping within the budget, this is something that I've added as a program that we can put in place to be considerate of the locations that we choose and so forth. This would reduce our risk and many other costs and many other impacts. Can I lead this forward? Again, somebody that would want to do that would have their own personal feel good about the work that they're doing, but also it's an opportunity to provide leadership into the organizations that you work.
absolutely, Leslie, I absolutely agree. I want to take the conversation a little bit about data, and because I think this is another area that you're doing a lot of good work. As you know, AKFI mission is to close the gap between digital transformation and sustainability. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning of the conversation. And we take this very seriously. We think, as you said, AI can play a major role. Not to dwell too much, but if we look at the European Union regulations, they include the supply chain, as you mentioned. So you have to measure the supply chain. It's no longer an option to not to report on the impact on the supply chain, especially things like scope 3, labor laws, and so on, fairness in treating the minorities, treating the employees equally, and so on in pay. And so all this data, I guess, now rolled up to the companies doing business in Europe, being home in Europe or just global companies. So data is becoming much more important, as you mentioned. AI, it's there, and what you see the role of data in the near future, in the distant future, data will have to be there. But how do we do this transition, especially to report on sustainability, which becomes a regulatory mandate?